This week's episode of the Irish Dance podcast is being sponsored by Irish Dance Theatre, who are currently auditioning for spots in their Christmas production, The Celtic Gift, playing in multiple venues in Colorado this December. For more information, please visit irishdancetheatre.com. If you would like to support Irish Dance Theatre, there are a number of ways you can do so. Please go to irishdancetheatre.com/support. My name is Martin Percival, and you are listening to the Irish Dance Podcast, folk dance to phenomenon and beyond. Hi everyone, I'd like to introduce today's guest. She's a dancer, a performer, a teacher, adjudicator, choreographer. Not only that, but she's actually a doctor of physiotherapy. Please welcome Róisín Cahalan. Hi, Róisín.
Hi, Martin. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome, darling. It's lovely to talk to you. So let's just start from the very beginning. Way back in the day.
How far back now are we talking, Martin?
We're talking. Okay, so let's start with how you got involved in Irish dance to start with. Okay,
so I'm from Limerick and current All Ireland hurling champions as of about 5 minutes ago.
For God's sake.
Okay, focus on the dancing, Róisín. Okay, so I started dancing here in Limerick with the Nolan School of Dancing, and I competed. Like most people at that time, up until I was around 17, 18. So I was quite successful. I would have been in top 3 worlds, All Ireland's, British nationals, all the big championships, and 5 times Munster champion. And then, like most people, it was, you get to a certain age and you stop competing. And then Riverdance came around. So I joined Riverdance in 96, just when the show split in 2. So I was listening to Brendan McGauley's podcast. So we talked a lot about this. So basically I joined Riverdance in 96 and I became understudy in 97, and then I became lead Riverdance a couple of years later. So I stayed then with Riverdance till 2004, at which stage I went back to study physiotherapy and continued to dance. So I had done my TC while I was in Riverdance in 97, but didn't use it until I left the show. So I had a small little non-competitive school, and then kind of left when I started to work in physiotherapy, left that for a little while, but my physiotherapy work and my dancing interest were brought together in my PhD. So I looked at injury in elite adult Irish dancers because there had been so little done about that, and continues to be relatively little done investigating pain and injury in Irish dancers. I since did my AD, and I'm now an adjudicator, and went back then to teaching a little bit. So we had some figure dance competitors at the World last year. So I'm kind of involved in it from every angle. So I'm a musculoskeletal physiotherapist and treat I don't know how many hundreds of Irish dancers at this stage. I teach a little bit, I adjudicate, I research dancers still. I've published widely on injuries in Irish dancers, and have also looked now at elite adolescent dancers. So I suppose, and the most recent thing then is the Complete Dancer Project, which myself and some of my colleagues from psychology, nutrition and sports and conditioning, we've put together a programme and a series of workshops for Irish dancers to optimise their health and performance. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, that was it. That's the whole thing. We can leave the podcast right there. Well, that's brilliant. Thanks for coming on. It was great. So the whole physiotherapy thing really interests me, just because, I mean, most dancers, when they were in Riverdance or, any professional show, are going to suffer some sort of injury at some point. And we had touring physiotherapists. So when did your interest in the physiotherapy side of things really start?
Okay. I think it would be interesting for people to know that when Riverdance started in the early days, we didn't have a physio, we didn't have masseurs. Things like warm-up and cool-down weren't really regulated. So it evolved as this high level of injury became apparent.
Right.
So I remember our first physio was a guy called Grant Plumley, and from New Zealand. And he joined, I think, in 97, I think. And after that, then we had some excellent masseurs and touring physios all the time, because obviously it's an elite activity. Your work schedule is very heavy. So that was an evolution, because professional dance really hadn't been a thing on the scale that it was when Riverdance and Riverdance started. So my interest in physio grew out of that experience in Riverdance. So I had been a computer programmer before that, of all things. And I basically...
I can't imagine that now.
Well, actually, there are a lot of similarities in that you're trying to solve a puzzle. So people who like puzzles and clues and putting a picture together, there is, if you've that kind of a brain, then it actually makes sense. The difficulty was I like people and I like talking, and as you might gather, and computer programming is very isolationist. So I literally made a list and spoke to the physios on tour, and really knew that this was something that I wanted to be involved in. And it's a fabulous profession. I now lecture in physio. That's my current day job as such. But it does give you a lot of opportunity to work in a lot of different areas. And so that's where the interest came from. And then as I started to treat more and more dancers, I saw the same things, the same patterns happening over and over again. Yeah. And as we know, since the genesis of all these big shows, like competitive Irish dancing has just exploded in terms of its complexity, the physical demands on dancers and the psychological demands on dancers. I mean, it's completely different than what we used to, even I suppose, at the top of our game 20 odd years. Yeah. It's completely different. And the calendar is all year round, which is a massive strain for dancers. So I saw these patterns starting to happen and became very interested in it. And there was really no research out there on Irish dancers. And there's no guidelines there for Irish dancers. So that's the direction that my research has taken me in now.
So do you, without being alarmist, do you think that that there's there's a huge problem in the Irish dance community in terms of people not looking after themselves properly?
Okay, I think there's a couple of things about that. I think if we talk about the Irish dance community as a whole, I don't think there is, because the vast majority of people don't compete at the elite level, which is where you will see the problems. Right. So I think it's one of my bugbears that Irish dancing gets this bad rap, in Ireland particularly, about wigs and makeup and the whole 9 yards, when in fact we're in the middle of an obesity crisis, and these kids are fit, they're healthy, they're creating networking skills, their team building, their ability to win and lose. So I think for the vast majority of kids, there is not a problem. The kids that go once or twice a week for an hour, that don't go beyond maybe man grad, I just love it and love to do it. There's loads of adults in that kind of environment as well. Where we do have a problem definitely is in the elite adolescent Irish dancers, and possibly the adults as well. So I've done a study recently looking at, it's a snapshot admittedly, of about 40 adolescent Irish dancers. Now they'd be elite, they'd be world level, we have some world champions, but they'd be all open dancers, and looking at their injury rate, it's about twice what their contemporary and ballet peers, so elite dancers in other genres of dance, would suffer in a year. And I followed them up over the course of a year. So every week I followed these dancers up and found out about how their injuries were, how their levels of pain were, how their health, sleep, and all these kind of things were. And again, I think there was only about 15% of them that didn't get injured. And there was people getting, 10, 11 injuries a year. So without a shadow of a doubt, and I think anybody who's involved in dancing at this level, we know that dancers are injured, but they dance in pain a lot of the time as well. That's an issue, and maybe we gloss over it. If they're not out, then they're okay, And I do think this is an issue, and I think, as I've said, the lack of guidance, and there is a thirst for people who want to know how to look after the health of their kids and their dancers. There really is, but I guess it's just kind of exploded. There hasn't been that guidance for people. Yeah,
so we're kind of playing catch up, right? In terms
Massively.
of So, I mean, I'm not going to put you on the spot and say you need to fix it, but so what can we do? What can we do as teachers? What can we do as parents? What can we do as dancers?
Oh God, there is so much we can do. There's so much we can do. There's lots of really simple basic things, from, doing a proper warm-up, doing a proper cool-down, and, and understanding what is involved in those things. Monitoring our children for when they are under things like, other types of stress, so exam stress, psychological stress, if they've had an issue in their own personal life, those kind of things predispose people to injury. If they're sleeping poorly, if they have been unwell, the next couple of weeks after that, they can be more prone to injury. If they're going through a growth spurt, so if they're going through a growth spurt, they will be more prone to problems where their muscles insert into certain bones. It's completely normal. It burns itself out. But for those kids, their flexibility goes, their coordination goes, everything goes out the window, and then they get upset. But they are prone to pain and injury at that time. So when the costume starts getting up and your wallet starts to scream, you know that that's the time to mind your kid. The other things that we can do are look at dance load, and this is an area that is only starting to be investigated in dance. And I think I'm the only one who's looked at it in an Irish dance, really. But what we know is that if a person has a heavy load, if their load spikes, and by load I mean not only the amount of dancing they do, but also how hard they find that dancing to be. Okay, so for instance, you might say, I did 60 minutes, but it was a team class and we danced down, so that's like maybe a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. So that's 120 points. But if you did 2 hours of your planks to Davis flat out, that might be a 9. So that load is much bigger. So what we encourage our dancers to do is just keep a really simple log of what their load is like. And if you're seeing a comparative spike in load relative to the weeks before, you need to be mindful of that, because your child or your dancer is at an increased risk. So I think teachers need to look at the annual calendar. They need to factor in rest. They need to factor in times when we'll work on strength and conditioning, or we'll work on mental imagery, or we'll just have some fun. Because we know that adolescent athletes, now not talking about dancers, but athletes, and we are athletes, who dance or compete all year round, as a lot of our guys do, particularly during a period of maturation. So when they're growing, those guys experience massive physical and psychological burnout.
Yeah.
So what you see is kids get injured and sore, and it mightn't be anything dramatic, but they'll also start to really dislike dancing. They'll start to just get, weary of it, and they'll have kind of insomnia or low-level aches and pains or flus or low mood or stress. And that's when you get into overtraining syndrome, and that's a really difficult cycle to get out of. Yeah. So that's your annual year. So there's, and then obviously good things like, good diet, footwear. The simple things like not sticking a child into a shoe 3 sizes too big because their point is accentuated. Playing the long game. I think goal setting as well for kids. If they are going to miss a competition, for parents and teachers not to it's not the end of the world. There is always another one. Yeah. We'll think about it. And we'll work on you so that you're fitter, stronger, and more focused and sharper when you come back.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying is we have to have a bit more of a holistic approach to the dancers themselves, and so that could be the responsibility of the dancer and the parents. But I think as teachers, we can probably what I find difficult is that we don't have any kind of curriculum. We don't have any national, there's no kind of industry standards of what we should be doing, and what kind of training we have about teaching, for one thing, but also awareness of, this of the physicality of what we're doing, and what we're putting dancers through. It pains me to say, but I know that a lot of teachers will probably just say, you'll get over it, and move on, and just gloss over a lot of stuff that is happening in class. So I don't know. I think perhaps we need to look at the industry as a whole and in how we teach.
Yeah, I don't know, do teachers gloss over it? I think most teachers really do care, but I think they're at a loss as to where to find the information. And that's kind of the crusade. And I say things and I have this group, as I said, a complete dancer project, and it's myself, it's another physio and sports and conditioning guy who now sees a lot of dancers and is blown away by the craziness. And I have a nutritionist and a dietitian who's worked in the dance world for years, and I have a doctor of sports psychology, and we bring that holistic thing to it. And that is our crusade. And we say things like that are not necessarily that popular, like be a parent, pull rank on your teacher. You know your child. If your child can't do it, you got to pull your child. Yeah. But I do agree that we need guidance. And, it's not rocket science. But it would be lovely to have a forum, and we're trying to do that with the Complete Dancer Project, and we have resources up, and we do workshops, and we're just starting. But we are looking for a kind of a culture change. Like, one of my personal things is that children should only be allowed to compete in so many qualifiers per year,
right.
And there you structure your training, your peaking, your tapering around those few competitions, and you can do other ones, but they don't need to be so heavily loaded, or so important.
Yeah.
And you factor in, you look at your calendar at the start of the year, what fetches are there. So as a teacher, you go, we'll focus on this, this, and this. And then we will factor in downtime. And even for those teachers who are teaching full-time, there is other stuff that you can do to keep your class moving that will improve your dancers, but not necessarily break your dancers.
Yes, I think that's the important key. I think it's all just about getting a balance in the class, but we it's like trial and error over the years, right, of what you can get done. So you're right, if there's some guidance for teachers, that would be great. And I really respect what you're doing with the Complete Dancer Project, because I know for when I was teaching, you're on your own. You kind of have to figure stuff out yourself. So and I really like the fact that you mentioned that there needs to be a rest period, and because within anything you have to have a rest run cycle, right? So it is a change in mindset, most definitely, for most teachers, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I mean, I do understand, like, when we do this, we try to be really practical. We give really practical, easy, implementable advice, because you don't want to be getting to be suggesting stuff that's just ridiculous. And you have to respect that this is people's livelihood and this is people's passion. But ultimately, you do want to have a healthier dancer who has a longer, happier, more productive career and achieves their absolute potential. And there are ways to do it. You're right. And it's individual as well. Not every child is going to... every child is different, so you have to set different goals for every child. And it is a conversation. And a child after a certain age has to take responsibility, but you set that culture within the class.
Yeah.
So we were suggesting, like, just little journals, of how much you're dancing, what exercises you're doing. So we do a lot on appropriate strength and conditioning. So the other thing we see with dancers a lot is that teachers, really well-intentioned teachers, get in strength and conditioning coaches who don't necessarily understand Irish dancing, and they flash the same muscles that are already banjaxed. So they'll get them out sprinting, they'll get them out doing loads of squat jumps and lunge jumps and blah, 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 blah. And they're overloading the muscles that are already really well developed at the expense of the ones that actually need to be worked on. Right. So we can get, for instance, if you look at, and I've dancers from, really beginner level right up to world champion level, and they nearly all have the same deficits because they're very much specialist athletes. Very few of them tend to be expert at other things because they don't have time. So that's an important part as well. So to get the correct strength and conditioning into dancers, and we show people how to do that and how to progress it. And then we get the dancers to monitor their own progress to see how they're doing. And what we've seen is that not only do injuries fall, which is obviously one important part, but performance improves and paces improve. Because we want to do both. We want to make you a healthier dancer, but we want to make you a better dancer.
Yeah,
within what's possible for each person.
Right. But making them a better dancer, that is probably the key to where we can hitch into, like, the teachers and what's that?
How you can sell it.
Yes, absolutely, how you can sell it. And that's what I mean to the teachers, because we need to have the teacher buy-in order for to the culture to change in the school, and therefore the culture to change. So I know you've done your research and stuff, and you may or may not be able to speak to this, but what's the difference between Irish dancers and, say, ballet dancers in the terms of where we're going and, like, how bad is it?
Well, no, I'm not. The thing with Irish dancing is that it's emerging at a phenomenal rate. You see new moves all the time. To go, oh, I haven't seen that before. And we're developing and changing it and evolving, and I think that is the sign of a living art, and that is phenomenal. And in the professional realms as well, like the fantastic stuff that Brendan the Gawley is doing and fusion fighters and all that. But if we're to look at the difference between ourselves and, say, ballet, if we look at the genre themselves, Irish dancing has some real peculiarities to it that from a research and from a guideline point of view make us unique. So the fact that we have our hands by our sides when we dance, that puts real challenges on your balance reactions, okay, and your elevation. So the dancer has to work harder to stay kind of steady and not to fall over their ankles all the time. We land on our toes with a relatively straight knee. If you show that to a ballet dancer and they go pale, they're like, you don't plie. So what's called our ground reaction force, the amount of force that goes up through our lower leg, is a multiple of what other dancers, other genres do. Our footwear is bananas. So we stand right up at the top. We don't have a toe box, and we won't even go there about heavy shoes, but there is work in progress looking at building the ultimate heavy shoe. So whoever does that will be a squillionaire, the shoe that's easy to break in. But in terms of guidelines, so for instance, ballet, you have to be able to do a certain amount of maneuvers, and you have to be able to do a certain amount of things before you can go on point.
Yes.
Okay? So for us, you can stick a kid up on the top of their blocks as soon as they're, 12, 13?
Yeah.
You know, but that child may have no ankle control. They may not be strong enough. You might be setting that child up for a broken ankle there and then. So age guidelines are not appropriate. And I really can't think of any other guidelines that we have apart from things you cannot do this before a certain age. So we need, I think, benchmarks, physical benchmarks. Can your child do a certain thing? For simple things like balance. I mean, Irish dance injuries, 75% of Irish dance injuries are to the foot and ankle area.
Yeah, of course.
So, now, that can be due to issues further up the chain, so further up the legs, other issues. But, I mean, if you don't have good balance, you're on a hiding to nothing. So, can your kids stand on one leg with their eyes closed for 30 seconds? Can they stand on their toes for 30 seconds, 1 foot at a time? Simple things like that. And you can make it fun and make games out of it and whatever for dancers. But I think even in terms of information sheets and things like that, I haven't seen any that have been issued centrally about, good practice. And there is lots of resources in other, genres. Now, I could be wrong about that. There may be loads of resources, but I'm just not aware of them. But, how to do an appropriate warm-up, cool down, what's the good exercises, how to manage an injury, those kind of basic things. They're taken for granted, whereas Irish dancers don't always know them. Yes,
I will 100% agree with that. Yeah. And I think part of the problem, part of what may happen is that, we get information from different sources, but I'm not sure whether it's necessarily the right information. So, because you have done the research on this, I would obviously trust the information that comes from you, but in terms of organisations, yes, I agree with you. I haven't seen anything come out on helping teachers or guidelines for teachers on what a correct warm up should look like, and this, that, and the other. And it's left on the onus of the individual teacher to formulate that, and which is fine. We're all in business, right? And so it's up to you to do that. But I do think as organisations, we could be helping people. I mean, we are growing, and I think it will come. And I think we can learn a lot from other genres of dance, and we can learn from sports, certainly. And that's why I work with people from other disciplines as well, just to get that expertise, that well-rounded information. But yeah, I do think we need more. And I think, as I said, teachers are really well-intentioned and they want to do the best for their kids. And they're sometimes just at a loss as to where to go, really. Yeah, and then where do you start, and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's a difficult road for teachers because they have to be so highly competitive. And if you miss, you miss a fish, then that's it. You're off the scene. So yeah, I think, just on that point, I think that is part of our problem. I think we have such a short term as teachers, as dancers. We have we don't play the long game well, Yes. I think we should be looking at a calendar of a year, 2 years, and planning along and go, I'm going to be selective, and really making sure that your dancers peak for those events, and that will gain its own rewards, Yeah, I find that fascinating because it's taking a more of an intellectual approach to how we do it, rather than just plug away, keep going as much as you can. When I was a dancer, my mum used to take me to a feis every weekend because she wanted to watch me dance. But I wasn't doing anything like the kids are doing these days.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It is a quandary, and it's balancing, obviously for teachers, that's their employment for a lot of it, and balancing your health and balancing the performance of the kids. Because you send a kid to a feis every week, they're going to burn out.
Yeah.
Their performance will die off. And that's the other part of it, that what we don't do well is in terms of coming up to big competitions, we run them into the ground. We don't taper like other sports do. So we have kids going up and they're absolutely knackered, but when they ever go on stage, fresh, enthusiastic kids. So look, what I'm saying, some people are going to think it's absolutely bonkers, and I think it's because I have a foot in and a foot out.
Yeah.
Of Irish dance. Like, I love it. I just am astounded when I judge at the amazing quality that's there. But at the same time, I'd happily go watch a rugby game instead of watching a feis. And he gets it. I see the wonderfulness and the artistry and the dedication and the passion, and I also see that it's completely bananas at the same time.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that you are uniquely positioned because you do have one foot in both worlds, and so I'm not putting all the pressure of the world on top of your shoulders, but it's just it. You've studied this, so for the listeners, listen.
Yeah, well, we did our inaugural workshop last week, and I had nightmares the whole night before, because I was like, I have no idea how this is going to be received. I dreamt that I went into a room and there was 15-year-olds throwing things at me and telling like the whole night, and I went, oh God. But it was really well received, and what we did was the kids had talks pitched appropriately from nutritionists, psychologists, and then myself and my partner Scott went in and we did a really quick fitness test. Then we brought them back to basics of movement, and we gave them some really simple exercises and showed them how to progress it and how it was relevant to dancing. Yes. And then we spoke to them about basics of injury management and looking after themselves and just things they should have in their toolbox in case they did get injured or sore, or what to do. And then with the parents, we talked about a lot of the similar things, but at a more appropriate level.
Yeah.
And goal setting and supporting their child through an injury and building confidence, getting back in, and how to deal with nerves. And so we don't have a situation where kids are vomiting all over the stages, which is just
nonsense.
You see nowhere else. So the feedback on the workshop was phenomenal. People took away so much that they can use that was practical. So that's our kind of mission.
Yeah, which is
my other jobs.
Yeah, no, and it's a brilliant mission, and which is why I wanted to interview on this podcast. I'm not sure what the following is for the podcast and this, that, and the other, but the important thing is that the information will be out there. It's evergreen; it will always be there. So the Complete Dancer project and you did the workshop last week. I think in terms of empowering children, it's amazing, because I do think that it's going to start with the kids now that are learning a different way. And so once they're aware, once they become, as dancers, we should be self-aware of our bodies and what we're doing to it and why we're doing it. So I think it's important that you said, to do some exercise and why it's relevant to their dancing. I think that's the key,
Yeah. Well, it would be lovely if they. And thank you for all those kind words. It would be lovely if we could just start that seed of just a slightly different culture without losing any of the magic that's there, because it is wonderful. I do love it, and I love all the different directions it goes in, the wonderful offshoots and the simply jaw-dropping dancers that you see. They're just phenomenal, and it's just be nice that they could mind themselves and make that a long and happy and healthy career.
Well, that's the key. That's the thing, isn't it? It's about having a long and healthy career into professionalism, if that's where it goes.
Choose to, yeah. And I think it's important as well to, the teachers, but also the parents. They need to be empowered, because obviously they are the ones, maybe when the kids are younger, that will be monitoring them and, can you do this exercise? How's your sleep? Knows the child that little bit better. So it's a real team thing. Yeah. And that's a bit of a we had lots of questions about, how am I going to tell my teacher that?
Yes, that's a huge challenge within the Irish dance community. The parent is very much separate from. I won't speak for every school, but for a majority that I know of, the parents would be very much separated from the team aspect. So bringing them in, which would cause some consternation for some teachers, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's tricky. I'm not saying it's not, and I mean, everything we're saying, maybe it all won't work, but the people that I work with who are not involved in the dance world find it astonishing that the parents kind of sit outside and are kind of quaking in their boots about what the teacher is going to say. In some cases, not all. I have to say that my own personal experience weren't really that, but there is a lot of it. But it is a bit of a change, and it's not going to be for everybody. And it might be trial and error, and there might be limits set and all the rest of it. But even if the parents are aware of what to look for, even at home, and to flag up to the teacher, my daughter or my son is having a really tough week, they're not sleeping well, they have a bit of a cold, I'm kind of worried, can they dance down a little bit today? Even that amount of information.
Yes.
Great.
So they don't get the abuse. Yeah. Yeah.
You said it.
Well, no, it's tough. But I've been there. I've been a teacher. I've been a student, and I had a very actively involved mother in terms of it, and she got on great with my teacher. So I did have a team environment there, but my teacher was very much the teacher, and what she said goes. But she had a sister who was a ballet dancer. Like, we had a lot of different exercises that we did in class, and some different some different training. So, I think in terms of that, I've always been exposed to a little bit more of being aware of why we're doing any one particular thing,
Yeah. And that's really important. And I think people who are exposed to other sports and other art forms do bring that with them. And that's very useful. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a tough one to solve, but just starting the conversation, I would imagine, is the step in the right direction. So what are the plans for the Complete Dancer project from here on out?
So we are talking to people in Australia, in the States and in the UK at the minute, as well as another workshop in Ireland, possibly up north a little bit. And we hope to do another one. We're trying to, of course, work around the FES schedule, so we hope to do another one before the end of the year in Ireland anyway. And we'll see from there. It was really, this first one might crash and burn, so we'll see. But we will continue. We have a Facebook site, and we put regular videos up there. We put regular resources around all aspects of dance, so not just the physical, but also, the mental management of dancers. So things like how important it is to continue to dance and exercise during exam times or exam years, maybe not compete, but just how important that is. We talk about nutrition, anything that we find, like we've come across a useful video of a useful exercise. So we'll put all those kind of resources for people. So
and that's all free, right, on Facebook?
That's for free, yeah.
That's all for free. So for the listeners out there, there's information you can gather from a reliable source at your fingertips.
Yeah, and I mean, if anybody wants to read the research, I've published about 10 or 11 papers in, peer-reviewed international dance and other science sports journals. Drop me a line on the Facebook page, and I'm really happy to send anything that people want to read. I'll send it on to you. Happy to do that as well. Yeah,
which is brilliant. So some transparency there with all of that. Yeah, and clearly the ultimate goal is to create, to help dancers. So we're not trying to put teachers out of business here. We want to supplement their, and boost their knowledge. Yeah.
The reality is that there are full-time dancing teachers out there, and that has to be respected and supported. And it's very possible to implement this kind of stuff and teach all year round. But you do have to factor in for, say, adolescents. I would say at least a 4-week break in the summer, week, maybe a Christmas a week somewhere else. But it's you can have lighter weeks, you can have weeks that are more strength and conditioning, mental imagery, as I was saying. You can have weeks that are just working on new material where you're not necessarily really drilling the child full out.
Right.
So you can absolutely do it.
Yeah.
You can do it in a better way so that your kids don't get injured and they can all afford to pay you and come to class all the time.
Because that is what they're worried about. Yeah.
Yeah, you can, and I think making it a little bit more varied. Certainly, I don't know how kids practice the same 3 dances in and out, because when you and I danced 47 million years ago, we had to have all 3 dances right. So this was a little bit of, well, that was me. You are, of course, much younger than me.
Yeah, by like minutes, right?
You're 2 months older than me, but we didn't say that. You said this is up for eternity, yeah? But, this is the reality. Just mix it up, make it more interesting, work on other facets of their performance, all that fun stuff, And I think for the teacher, it's probably going to be more interesting as well.
Yeah, I think that's the key. To make it more interesting for everyone, because as teachers, we'll do it. We go in and we love it, and we'll teach till we drop dead, basically. But it's just, I always thought when I was teaching, and I taught for 10 years in Denver, and I always thought to myself, I need to take some time. I need to take some time away from teaching right now and figure out, intellectualize it and come up with a year curriculum of what I'm doing, so that I know what I'm doing going into every class and the goals that I'm trying to achieve. And then, the kids could buy into that. But of course, I never did it because I didn't ever have the time, because the FESH schedule was so crazy.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It's about taking that step back and looking at the year and going, this is what I'm going to do. And then and coming down to a more micro level and looking, week by week, maybe a month at a time, and go, okay, or a quarter at a time, and this is what I'm going to do in these classes, and this is how I'm going to mix it up. And that takes a lot of work. But of course, once you've done it once or twice, it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, because, speak to that then a little bit. So within, let's say a 3-month period in a dance school, yep. What kind of cycles should the teachers be doing? How much strength training? How much? I know it depends on the individual student, but
and even to bring it down, I suppose it depends on what that 3-month block is about. So if we'll say that is coming up to Easter, that's your 3-month block, okay?
Right.
So you have to kind of break that down into your 12 weeks. And even within the week, what is recommended in high-intensity sports like ourselves is that you would alternate light and heavy days.
Yes.
And then there's guidelines that say that a child of whatever age they are should do no more than that X number of hours of practice per week. So if a child is 15, they should do no more than 15 hours of activity total. And they should also have, this is so important, and I haven't mentioned it yet, a minimum of 1 to 2 days fully off.
Right. With nothing, rest. Yeah.
And Irish dancing teachers balk at that. They're like, that's wasted time, but it's not. That's when your muscles recover and grow. That's when you replenish all the fluids and everything else that you've exhausted over the week. That's when you become more ready to go again at it the next week, So you need to factor in those things. You never have an elite athlete, or very rarely, that doesn't have a rest day as part of their training week.
Yeah, agreed.
It is part of training. It is not a day off. This is part of your scheduled week. So what I would say is you look week to week, okay? You want to build up towards, so if you're coming back after Christmas and they've had 2 weeks off, you don't want to go hell for it the first day.
Right.
You want to build it nice and handy. And we do these things. We come back after the summer and we do crazy workshops and break our kids before the season even starts.
Right. No, yeah. Absolutely.
We do, And there's so much you can do in a workshop. It's so valuable. Don't cancel them, but just build it up. So you think of it as like building up, and then bearing in mind that you don't lose fitness, cardiovascular fitness, or muscular power before 7 to 14 days. So you have a week where they can potentially do very little and still be really fresh. So you want to have that taper period before your big championship. So don't have them on the warm-up floor in the world, going at it full tilt.
Right.
They can do some short sessions, just to, the work is done. That week then is your mental imagery, finessing it. Your brain doesn't know that your body isn't doing it. As far as your brain is aware, it's finessing those patterns, it's polishing, but your body's resting, you're becoming more focused. So if you bear in mind those kind of principles of week by week, building the load gradually, having no spikes in load, building in rest days, alternating light and heavy load days, looking at what they're doing but also how fatiguing they're finding it, and then taper down, and build in a rest period after that big session. So that's what I think would be a nice way to construct it. And then in terms of strength and conditioning, It depends where the child is at. And I wouldn't say that you would have to do it every day. You might only do a little bit and let them work on it. And then once they get to a certain level, it's maintenance. So they might only have to do it a certain number of reps of whatever exercise to keep that.
Right.
So you need more individual guidance on that. And again, it's using the correct muscle groups, not burning out the ones that are already doing all the work, looking at the ones that we need for good posture, for good stability when we jump, all those kind of things that bring carriage faults, It's the muscles that we don't use well enough that when we focus on, we can bring those big changes.
Yes, completely agree.
But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So it's not rocket science by any stretch of the imagination.
No, but it may be a little bit complicated if you've never done it before. So, yeah.
And we do that. We in the workshop we map out a calendar year, and my business partner Scott Murphy has done that, and he'll pull out a few fascias, and I'm like, okay, that one's really important. That class is a class. But you pick out the qualifiers that you're aiming for, you pick out the big championships, and the other fascias that are important, and you factor in, okay, when are they going to recover?
Yes, yeah. So you can tailor it, yeah, absolutely.
You can, and I appreciate that it's very abstract for people when I'm speaking like this, and I'm waving my hands around mad as I'm speaking to you. I'm just directing an orchestra here, but if you just write out a grid and just break that week down into 7 days, light session, heavy session, light session, heavy session, light session, day or two off, or a day when we do whatever we do, but it's not killing the child,
Yeah.
And factoring in what they do at home, obviously, as part of that.
Yeah, it all sounds, yes, when you break it down, and I just think that's the key. So is all of this information on or would people be getting this at the workshop?
The calendar stuff would be more specifically at the workshop, but it's probably something that we will come to because we do think it's something that's missing in the dance world, not only Irish dancing, but other genres as well. So we probably will address it. But certainly you get, well, I suppose with everything, you get much more detail at the workshop. But we will come to that. It's important.
Yes, I agree. And then in terms of your research and what you're doing, how is that progressing, and what are your plans?
That's a very good question. I've done some qualitative research at the minute with some students of mine, and that's looking at how dancers experience injury on a kind of psychological, personal level, and looking at levels of support, and also looking at clinician and what clinician understanding of the demands of dance is. I'm just publishing some work on comparing older Irish dancers, so say 18 and up, who are full-time students of dance, looking at those dancers versus contemporary dancers to see how they compare in their makeup. So I'm very interested in the whole biopsychosocial representation of dancers. So like you said, the holistic. So I'll screen them physically. I look at their balance and their strength and their endurance, but I'll also look at their attitudes to pain and their passion for dance, because we can be either maladaptive or we can be healthy. Very seriously, there is this distinction, whereas maladaptive people tend to keep dancing even if their legs are hanging off, and those are the people and we all know them.
Of course we do.
and those are the people who develop really, really, really bad career-ending injuries, those people have a really unhealthy obsession with dance, and looking at those relationships. So I'm doing a lot of that. I'm publishing as well on the adolescent dancers that I've followed for a year. So we're writing that up at the minute. And after that, I'm not sure. As I said, I lecture, so I do a lot of sports stuff as well. So I'm very interested in sleep. So I'm going to probably look at some sleep stuff in dancers, but also very interested in the psychological profile of dancers. I'm talking like the elite dancers who are just, super competitive at that early age, who are unidisciplinary athletes from a very young age. It's a really interesting field. So maybe some of that stuff. I've done a lot of the physical stuff. I'll see. I'm kind of just writing up all the research all the data I've collected. I have some data on ballet dancers as well, which I need to write up. They're just better than us at like everything. Stronger, fitter, more flexible, but that's their gig.
Why is that though? I mean, just because there's a different culture in terms of their training.
I'm actually being I'm being a little unfair then. That was actually quite a professional group, so I shouldn't be comparing them. But I have compared the contemporary students to the Irish students, and they seem to be a little different. All right, we both have around a similar injury rate, but they tend to be a little bit fitter, stronger, maybe because of the tests that I used, or maybe just that they actually train that little bit better. The other thing that I found with both groups is that we don't cross-train appropriately, so we don't do those other types of healthy exercises that help us. There's a low level of that. But contemporary dancers catastrophize more than we do. And by that I mean it's a very important thing, because catastrophization is really linked to how people cope with injury. Okay, so if you're one of these guys who stub your toe and go, oh my God, my toe will fall off, I'll never dance again, you will deal with an injury a whole lot differently to someone who barely notices that they stubbed their toe.
Right.
Okay? So the person who catastrophizes has a much deeper experience of the injury. It is much more traumatic for them. They come back slower. They tend to get re-injured more easily. They miss a lot more time from dancing. So that's a really interesting thing as well to look at, Yeah. And we know these kids, so there's a big, and the other thing that's come up, people with low mood, so anger and hostility and depression, they tend to experience injury a lot, or people who have a lot of day-to-day pain,
Yeah.
I mean, like the vast majority of Irish dancers think it's, dance in pain, very frequently or always, I mean, that's just, we've normalised pain. And that's across dance, that's just not us. We've normalised, but sure, yeah, my leg is sore, but sure what? It's always sore.
Yeah, but it's scary if you think of the long-term effects of it, yeah.
Potentially. Not every, I mean, I'm obviously in fabulous physical condition, as are you. I have no creaky knees or
Oh, stop. I can hear you from here.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, but we don't really know, and that's another thing to look at and I have done a little bit on retired professional dancers like me and you, how we are 20 years down the line. So, but that's another story.
Yeah, it's a whole different podcast, that one.
I have to put that on a private channel.
We'll get some old farts together and talk about that. Oh, brilliant. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover?
No, I think I have just got up on my soapbox now for quite long enough. I'm sure your listeners have gone, oh my God, is she still ranting on?
No, I think people will find this fascinating, and most especially the parents, and I think that's where it's going to come from. Is a bit of pushback from the parents, and then things can change. But I'm
going to be really popular with every dancing teacher after this, aren't I?
Yeah, but I mean, it's necessary. It needs to happen, and it's just, like even I was trying to develop. What I wanted to do was to develop with because I went to a few ballet classes, just beginner ballet, and I wanted to develop a whole exercise warm up kind of bar exercises for Irish dancers. Mm-hmm. And, I mentioned it to a few teachers, and I tell you, I might as well have told them that I don't know what, because the feedback I got from them was like, that'll never work. Nobody will ever want to do it. What's in it for us? Blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, don't you want your dancers to be able to be the strongest and best dancers they can possibly be? I'm like, we're looking at two different things. Like, this is all about your ego right now. It gets on my nerves. And, it's just like, we don't look at movement. We don't look at how we're training dancers to move and this, that, and the other. We're so isolated. But anyway, that's me on my soapbox.
No, and I think, the teachers who want to embrace it will, and they will get the results, and they will get stronger, better dancers, fitter, healthier dancers. And those that don't, well, maybe they have their own approaches, and that's fine.
Yeah.
It's a conversation, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. We've still got one section. We've got our rapid fire question section.
Yeah.
Okay, so
what is the capital of?
No. It's quite easy. Okay, so what's your favourite food?
Oh, Italian of any description.
Very nice. I think I know the answer to this one. Riverdance or Lord of the Dance?
Not even a serious question. Riverdance.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, God. Well, I don't know if it's a piece of advice, but I suppose I've learned is don't be afraid to try things. So what if it goes wrong?
Yeah, we learn a lot from supposed failure. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Is there a book that you've read that's changed your life?
No, because I read trashy, murdery books, or the gorier the better, or stupid girly books that I could read 5 times and don't remember that I've read it before because they're so vacuous. So no.
Brilliant, but you've worked hard enough in other areas. Yeah. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Oh God, yes.
Yes, good girl. Right, what would you say that has been a success for you as a dancer, and what has been a challenge, either competitively or professionally?
I suppose, I think, the whole Riverdance experience was as a dancer, but I also did lots of other things. I did that whole opportunity was my great success. And I suppose my challenge or my disappointment was never having won a major, having coming fairly close lots of times. But, c'est la vie.
Yeah. Do you have a pet peeve as an adjudicator?
Yes, I do.
I thought you might.
This drives me mental now. It's not that I would take any points off for it, but people come out and do the huge, enormous smile. And then they try and smile the whole way through it, and they look like they're having a stroke, and it slips off their face, and there's so much focus going on the face, that the beautiful stuff that's going on elsewhere is detracted from. I just think, just dance, forget about your face unless it's doing weird things, which it is if you're trying to smile. So I'm very happy with people just having the nice blank face when they dance. Yeah, that would be my pet peeve. What's yours as a matter of interest?
Oh, just it's carriage, but it's but generally it's just when people. What really annoys me is when somebody comes on and they're like super confident.
Yeah, and you're like, yay!
And then they can't even turn their feet out, or they walk on like turned out, like they're going to fall over. They're so turned out, and then start dancing, and the feet are either straight or turning. I'm like, they've been trained how to walk onto the stage, which is just nonsense. Anyway, yeah, my pet peeve. So, what do you look for as an adjudicator?
Oh, I love a natural dancer. I can appreciate beautiful material, but if a person just is a natural dancer, I really don't care what they're doing. So beautiful pointed toes.
Yeah.
God, I've forgotten how to point their toes. Beautiful cross feet, straight leg. I don't care if it's not over your head, if it's straight.
Yeah.
The basics done well. I mean, the most beautiful dancers are the effortless dancers, aren't they?
Yeah. No, 100%.
Yeah. If you see me coming, don't worry about not being fancy. I'm all about doing the basics. Yeah, I'm kind of simple again.
Yeah, tone it down and just make it beautiful. Yeah.
Smiling.
You'll have some right miserable dancers in front of you now.
Fine by me.
Okay, so finally, what's a piece of advice you would give to aspiring Irish dancers, be it competitive or professional?
In terms of what? Just
sage words from Dr. Róisín.
Okay, if I'm being Dr. Róisín, I would say trust your body and trust your instincts. You know when something is just a niggle, and you know when something is wrong, because dancers know their bodies.
Yes.
Pay attention to that and bring it to somebody who will listen to you. Because it's the bad pains, it's the ones that don't feel right that we ignore. They cause the problems.
Yes.
So in my Dr. Róisín capacity, that's what I would definitely say. Trust your body.
Right. And just as not Dr. Róisín.
Oh, Dr. Róisín. I suppose in terms of being a professional dancer, oh God, embrace every second of it. I think if I was to go back, I would. We toured at a phenomenal time when we had long tours. Make every day count. You see amazing things, you're with amazing people, there's potential to learn so much. You know, I could be fluent in Russian and played 3 instruments if I had...
I know, right? If we'd spent some time doing some stuff rather than just...
Doing some stuff, around, dressing up as Adam and Eve, etc., etc. But yeah,
we won't post that picture.
No, we won't. But I do think, and it's the nature of the beast. When you're you know, in your 20s, you just want to go and you know,
party.
Party, I guess. But I suppose to take some time to just really live in the moment and enjoy what's there. Because if you listen to any of us old farts, as you said, you know, we reminisce ad nauseum about this heyday that's long gone. So it is amazing times, and I don't think that maybe we appreciated it for what it was at the time.
No, of course we didn't. We were too young, and
wasted on the youth, isn't it? Wasted on the young.
Yeah, exactly.
And we weren't even that young, dude.
I know, right? Oh well. Never mind. Well, Dr. Róisín, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. You're an angel.
Oh, my pleasure, Martin, and lovely to speak to you.
I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. A huge thank you, as always, to Sean Softly for the title music to this podcast. His album, Fesh Strings, Music for Irish Dance Volume 1, is available on iTunes. I have a small favour to ask. Please visit theirishdancepodcast.com and fill out the short survey about the podcast. Every response is read. Please let your voice be heard about the podcast. I would very much appreciate it. Thank you and have a great day.